Right now, the day's biggest news stories from a Vegas perspective. This is the Vegas Take with Sharp and Shapiro.
All right, welcome back. It is the Vegas Take. Sharp and Shapiro, glad you could join us. A nice little 3-day weekend, and we are back at you. Our producer, Jason Stein, in studio as well. And this was a time that we usually had the minister, Stretch Sanders, joining us for a weekly segment. Well, that won't be happening anymore. If you don't know who Minister Stretch Sanders is, he's an activist. Done a lot of good things for the African-American community. I think some people could dispute that, but I've always started off every segment with him saying, Stretch, I think your heart is in the right place. I think you've done a lot of good things for a lot of good people, but I think we disagree on a lot of things. And, just if you forgot who the minister Stretch Sanders is, here's a few comments he's made on this show that I think you could say would be somewhat controversial. Here they are.
White people commit more crimes than black people. Hispanic people, people of color, we're not on the top. So therefore, we can't even be racist. Racism is a thing that only white people can be. I would actually disagree with you and say that I think that the majority of police officers are indeed racist.
You really believe that?
I believe
I'm
that.
sad to hear you say that.
I believe that.
Okay, so first of all, he's saying that African Americans cannot be racist. I completely disagree with that. That's an absurd thing to say. I can also tell you that the majority of police officers are not racist. It is just not factually accurate. Are there a smaller percentage of police officers? There's some bad apples in the bunch? Absolutely. There's no question about that. But I think if you really want to be taken seriously and you really want to do good things in your community, you can't make comments like that and piss off all police officers and say the majority of police officers are racist because, first of all, it's not true. And you can't go on the record and say that African Americans cannot be racist because people are going to laugh at that. There are even African Americans that called into this show that disagreed with him. So you can't make the argument that, and I know he said this on social media, that he didn't like getting into debates on this show with white people. That's I'm paraphrasing here, but that's what he said. We had many African Americans call to the show.
Being sworn at by Caucasians.
Okay. I can't recall.
This was what he said on social media.
Certainly, we always treated him with respect here on the show. So I was very disappointed to hear him say those things. So anyway, the reason why we bring up Minister Stretch Sanders, he called us and had a conversation with our producer. We had a mutual agreement that he's not going to be doing his weekly appearances anymore, and that's fine. That's fine. But yesterday, we talked about his Martin Luther King protest, and basically it was an Occupy Fremont protest. What did this have to do with? Well, it had to do with the homeless ordinance that Mayor Carolyn Goodman and people on the city council put together. And if you don't recall this, we did talk about it ad nauseum. But basically what it is in regards to if you're caught on certain zones on public sidewalks and you're sleeping downtown or in certain zones, a homeless person can get up to a $1,000 fine, I believe, and up to 6 months behind bars, which is absurd.
If they're choosing to be on the street instead of going to a shelter where there's space.
So that's why the minister went downtown to Fremont Street, and it was called Occupy Fremont Protest. So here's ABC 13 reporter Joe Partells, who was covering this yesterday, and here's his report.
One by one, police picked off protesters and hauled them away from iconic Fremont Street in downtown Las Vegas. Police not messing around after some literally set up camp in the middle of Fremont Street Monday night.
Homelessness is a very serious problem, but the bigger problem is that our government is not taking our opinion into account.
Katie Krikorian was among the protesters arrested. She, along with dozens of others, showed their frustration with signs and chants, their anger focused at city leaders.
It deserves our outrage, and we plan to resist and fight every step of the way until they decide to end this homeless ordinance.
The group marched to Fremont Street, where some protesters pitched tents and lay down in the street. Police gave multiple warnings and then cleared the protesters out of the road.
The street cleaning ordinance, the most frustrating part is that the Department of Sanitation said that they don't have issues cleaning the street. This is a completely unnecessary bill, and it's just the second step in clearing homeless away where we can't see them.
All right, so there you go. That was the report from last night. Jason Stein, our producer, has been covering this story, and he's going to give us an update on a little more of the specifics of what took place yesterday and how many people were arrested. Jason, go ahead.
Yeah, well, basically, there were about 100 people there. I don't know if that was mentioned in the report. There were only about 100 people that showed up, and they did what Stretch said they were going to do. They stood and they blocked the street. Well, there were cops on horseback and cops on on foot. And they and I was watching this live yesterday on the news, and they gave them many options to disperse and get out of the way. And a lot of them did. And then there were about 12 or so that didn't. Those 12 people got arrested and put in those zip tie handcuffs. They put them on the curb and then they hauled them away. Now, Stretch Sanders, our former guest on the show, he was there and he had his, like a bullhorn, and he was chanting, and there were some Black Panthers there, and he was being vocal, and he was getting the crowd pumped up. But he was not one of the people arrested. He was not arrested, and I confirmed that with him this morning. We still talk, and no, he is not one of the people, but 12 people arrested in all. One of the funnier things that happened at this largely peaceful protest was that a few homeless, this is from the RJ, they report a few homeless people milling about joined into the protest. One of them even carried a 30-pack of beer into the streets while people continued to zip line above on the Slotzilla. Yes. Afterwards, 3 officers' horses defecated on the street. One protester shouted, "I thought the city wanted to keep these streets clean. Arrest your horse," which, of course, completely different thing when a horse defecates versus a human being, right?
Let me speak. Let me give you.
I love that effective 30-pack protest by that homeless guy, though.
Yeah.
Let me give you my opinion on this whole thing that took place yesterday, and my opinion of it has not changed. First of all, this is a waste of taxpayer money. For these people that think that they did something good on Martin Luther King Day by being arrested and doing nothing more by shouting out chants and holding up signs, and maybe they were blocking the streets. I don't know if that's true or not. You're not accomplishing anything, okay? And I'm pretty confident. Yes, there has to be resistance. I get it. But if you asked Martin Luther King, how should we remember him on Martin Luther King Day? And he learned that, and I don't want to speak for Martin Luther King, but at the same time, I'm pretty confident that if you asked him about this, I think he would tell you that there's probably better ways of going about it.
I don't think trying to stop commerce for 80 or 100 businesses owned by women and men of all races, I'm sure some are African American, is what Martin Luther King would have recommended either.
Right. So in the end, what took place here? What, 12 people got arrested?
12, I mean, that's it. I mean, 12 people were arrested, and I don't know what that does to solve the problem or call attention to it even, because the story, as it's being covered, is here's 12 people that got arrested. And, whatever issues they have with the homeless, that's completely buried. Now, as far as Martin Luther King goes, there's a huge Martin Luther King rally on MLK Day here in Vegas. Hundreds of people went to it. That seems like, to me, again, this is just my opinion, that seems like a better way to maybe honor MLK. But
talk about racial
anyway, I think
injustice.
It's fair to say that this thing on Fremont Street was a complete bust.
You want to talk about racial injustices that are still in our society? I think Martin Luther King would certainly be on board with that. There's no question about it.
And also, just a promoter's tip here, Stretch. If you're going to, you were talking about this 6 to 8 weeks ago on our show, you should have spent the last 2 weeks every Tuesday talking about this protest. If you actually wanted a legitimate turnout, that's how you properly promote events. Which is what you tried to do here.
What did he have? 50 people show up?
They have about 100, and then the crowd thinned out, and by the time the cops started moving in and arresting people, I think they were down to about 50.
So let me make another important point. Do you think that what are they trying to accomplish? They want to change the ordinance that was put in place, the way homeless people are treated, right? They want it changed on the books. So if that's your objective, if you're Carolyn Goodman, do you think you're sitting at your desk right now saying, "Wow, they got 50 to 100 people to show up to this protest. Wow, 12 people got arrested. Wow, I better change what I'm doing in Las Vegas." Do you really think that Carolyn Goodman is going to change this ordinance and change the laws because this man brought 50 to 100 people, and one of the homeless people brings beer, and 12 people get arrested?
A 30-pack of beer, Brian.
And do you really think that Carolyn Goodman is dumb enough where she would actually change the laws put on the books because Stretch got 50 to 100 people to show up on Fremont? Now, look, If they got 5,000 people and they shut down Fremont Street, I would be singing a different tune right now in the air.
If it took the police officers 4 or 5 hours to disperse the crowd instead of 3.5 minutes,
right?
Then it would be a different conversation. But you're right. 50 to 100 people in a city with 2.5 million people is not exactly a great percentage, and it doesn't lean credit to the fact that maybe Las Vegas isn't that angry about this homeless ordinance.
It sounds like the Thomas and Mack Center, UNLV basketball. I'm sorry.
There were actually more people at the protest, I think. But JD, I have to say, to your point about it being a very quick process in terms of arresting people. This is a sacrifice that I make for this show. I watched about 2 hours of local news yesterday at my house.
Oh boy!
And I'm telling you, so at about 5:55 p.m., the news reported that police were starting to move in, and you could see that they were starting to march with their helmets and their batons and all that stuff.
Right.
And then of course, local news went, "We'll be right back. We have to take a break." So I'm going, wait, what happened?
By the way, Stein's getting in arguments with good-looking reporters on social media. That's what I mean.
Yeah, I had to send them a few notes about how they could do better on their coverage. But anyway, so at 5:55, they say, okay, the police are moving in. Here they go. They're going to start making arrests. They go, we'll be right back after this break. So I lost my mind, but then they come back at about 6 o'clock, and they go, and the reporter comes on, and he says, well, it's all over. The protest is over. 12 people are arrested. Let's go to the video from just a few moments ago. So, honestly, that's how quick it was. Like, they went to break. The cops were moving in. They did the commercial break at the top of the hour. They came back, and the whole thing was over. So we're talking 5 minutes. And then there were like 12 hippies with Bernie Sanders signs that were on the curb with zip ties around their.
Well, listen, like I said, the objective of this was to try to get Carolyn Goodman and the city council members to change these laws that have been put on the books when it comes to homeless people. And if that's your objective, in my personal opinion, it was a failure. When you have 50 to 100 people show up, more people will show up to my 40th birthday party in a couple months. So,
maybe.
Where's it going to be, Brian?
I don't know. I haven't decided yet.
Elvis Suite?
I haven't decided yet. But anyway, the point I'm trying to make here is that, 50 to 100 people showing up is not going to change laws that are put on the books. You needed thousands. And we gave Stretch the platform to try to do that. And even though I disagreed with his way of going about it, I was still supporting him in this sense that as long as I didn't like the fact that he was prepared for people to get arrested. I don't think that's the right way to go about it. But I was still willing to hear him out, and we did. We heard him out plenty of times, and he is the one that has decided to, take a break from the show.
And we had a conversation. I was in the process of setting up, and then they were going to bring a special guest. It was Martin Luther King III, and I was going to set him up with a room at the Westgate, and all that fell through as well. So this could have been a pretty big event if it was done correctly, but I think that it was not done correctly, and this kind of ends up being all for naught as far as the premise and what you were trying to accomplish.
Wait, you were trying to get Martin Luther King III a room? Were you trying to romance him? I don't know. Why can't he afford his own room? I don't understand that. That's a weird situation.
That's just how it works with public appearances.
I don't know, but MLK III took one look at this protest and said, "Yeah, I don't think I need to be a part of this one. I got better things to do on my dad's birthday."
That's probably the truth.
Yeah, well, listen, Stretch and our show, we have decided to both part ways. That's fine. We even gave him a last chance effort to appear on the show today to defend what took place yesterday. He declined to do that. And it is what it is. But we will continue to monitor this story. But I don't think the rules on the books are going to be changing anytime soon. All right, we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, if you guys haven't already noticed, the Trump impeachment trial is resuming today. And it's going on right now as we speak, I believe. I think it started a short time ago. We are going to go into that, and I'm going to go into the fact why I believe that the Republicans, many of them, do not want to know the truth and why the truth needs to be told, and then we all need to figure out, and why Mitch McConnell, by the way, wants this to go into 1 a.m. We're going to explain that and much, much more coming up next. You're listening to The Vegas Take right here on the all-new 101.5 FM, 720 AM, KDON.